Years ago, we stopped the practice of separating Amerindian families. Did we reverse course? Okay, so each time this person hears new details about the U.S. government's separation policy at the border, they find themselves compelled to remind people that the horrific removal of children from their homes by the U.S. government officials is not, in fact, a new phenomenon, nor has it stopped. This has continued. I was removed from my home as a youth, okay, temporarily, and it was because people did not agree with certain viewpoints of my family, okay? So until the Civil War, the states and federal government enforced laws which allowed children to be sold during the slavery era. In more recent times, well-meaning or not so well-meaning state officials, religious organizations, and adoption agencies removed Amerindian children from their homes and families on tribal reservations. As recently as a generation ago, at least 1/3 of Amerindian children were removed from their households. 1/3. It is difficult to overstate the amount of disruption and harm that this scale of child removal can have on a community or a family. These removals often became permanent. Now, this is an attempt of genocide. It's to remove children from one setting and put them in another setting so that they can be raised according to the prevailing norms, okay? Now, it appears that the courts are reopening the question of how and when Amerindian children can be removed from their families. Okay, is it difficult? Now, mind you, I'm not Amerindian as far as I know. I probably am because I'm part Brazilian. I have to do a genetic test, but it doesn't really matter. My point being is this. It's not just Amerindian children that are being removed from their homes, and I'm going to show that in a second. In 1978, Congress passed the Indian Child Welfare Act to stop this often unjustified taking of children, no matter the rationale. Child removal was sometimes based on moral, religious, or child welfare concerns. Moral, religious, or child welfare concerns. Moral or religious. The government should not be legislating morality or religiosity. Okay? For the past 40 years, the Indian Child Welfare Act has been an important piece of legislation that has allowed tribes to regain a measure of self-governance. But what about the average American family? Do they have the ability of self-governance? No. And it's because the government is infiltrating the family through the school systems and through the psychiatric industry to take children, okay? And I'm going to show that. So let me move on here. Okay, this is from Circling Eagle Law Firm, and this is about what would happen if the American Indian Child Welfare Act is overturned. Now, this is what you have to understand. Assimilating cultures, they want to force their morality on you and your children. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're Amerindian, it doesn't matter if you're black, it doesn't matter if you're white, it doesn't matter if you're whatever. The point is that psychiatry allies itself with whoever the prevailing culture is. In the 1960s, it was conservative. Well, actually prior to the 1960s. But it used to be conservative, and it was enforcing social norms that were conservative. Now it's militantly hyper-liberal, and it's enforcing things like transgenderism and homosexuality and things like that, and critical race theory. The point is that no matter who is being victimized, people are being victimized, and the vehicle for this is the mental health industry and the law, because law and mental health are kind of merged. Now I'm going to move on. This is about the trauma of Native Americans and mental health. You can read this on your own. I don't feel like going through this right now. It's not important overall, but it does show the disproportionate suffering of Native Americans versus other people in the United States, and this has a lot to do with the victimization. And this victimization took place by the church and by the state and by the mental health industry. It even talks about a Native American asylum, okay? And it's, you have to understand that this is how, when you use mental health to see, the asylum was developed during a time when the U.S. Congress had passed a federal law that prohibited American Indian people from practicing their own customs. And you will see they are prohibiting white Americans from practicing their own customs at this point. So there's illegal names in Germany, okay? Did you know that? Did you know that there are illegal names in Germany? A given name shouldn't... Okay, so let's look at these names. Adolf Hitler, AGFA, Adam Fried, Bandito, Batman, Bitterstrub, Borussia, Chaotica, Dracula, Einstein. You can't name your kid Einstein in Germany. Okay? So keep this in mind. You can't name your kid any of these Graf, Gramophone, so this, you can't name your kid what you want to name your kid. Judas, Junge, Jorgensen, Kaiser, Lenin, Lord, Lucifer, McDonald's. Okay, these are names that you can't name your child. Whiskey, West End. Okay, this is Sonne. You can't name your child Son. Shaggy, Schroeder, Schmitz, Satan, Rumpelstiltskin, Waldmeister, Wildchild. Okay, these are verboten names, forbidden names. Now, would you think that there are forbidden names in the United States? 37 outlawed names, baby names around the world. Nutella, Akuma in Japan, Anal, New Zealand won't allow you to name your kid Anal, Geisha, Tallulah, okay, Osama bin Laden, Robocop, Chief Maximus, this thing, at circumcision, 12 and 13, Harriet and Duncan, Metallica, Chow Tao, Linda. Linda is banned in Saudi Arabia. Sex Fruit is banned in New Zealand. Monkey, Venerdi, Nirvana is banned in Portugal. Now, question, what if you're a Buddhist and want to name your child Nirvana? Guess you can't do that. Strawberry is banned in France. Full Stop is banned in New Zealand. Sarah. Prince William. Prince William is banned in what country? I don't even know. Minnie Cooper is banned in somewhere. Hermione, okay. Fish and Chips is banned in New Zealand. Cyanide is banned. 007 is banned. So what I'm showing is these are names that are banned, okay? But you wouldn't think that the United States, with our First Amendment and our freedom of religion and our freedom of speech, you don't think that we'd have banned names. You certainly don't think the state could come in and take your child if you named your child something that they didn't like. Would you? Would you think that? A New Jersey couple loses custody of their son because they named him Adolf Hitler. The New Jersey parents who gave their children Nazi-inspired names. Now, mind you, this is them practicing their culture. Okay? Who is the state to tell these people what their culture is? Court documents show that the oldest child frequently threatens to kill people, and the mother once slipped a note to a neighbor saying that she was terrified of her husband. Well, this is a reason to help the mother and the children. This is not a reason to confiscate the children or to rename the children. So Adolf Hitler Campbell, 4 years old, and his two younger sisters, Jocelyn Aryan Nation Campbell and Hanslin Hindler Janine Campbell, will remain in the care of Division of Youth Family Services. Okay, now ultimately, if you know about this case, they really didn't come to any reason why they removed these kids except for the names, which was Aryan Nation and Adolf Hitler. Okay, but this is their culture. Who are you to tell these people what their culture is? Okay, the 49-page ruling shed light on the bleak life inside. Okay, so there's a bleak life, yada, 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 yada. Asked about the letter during court, da, 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 da. Now this is what's funny. If you work in mental health, there are many, 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 many children of minority parents that live in bleak living conditions and are readily abused and readily receive violence from their parents. When I was in the homeless shelter, every mother there would readily beat her children in front of the staff. Every mother happened to be black. There were no white women with children there. So my point being, their children were never taken away. It almost seems like these people were targeted not because of the bleak environment inside the home, but because of their race and their culture. Mass confiscation of Native American children has not gone away. In South Dakota, 700 Native American children a year are taken from their families. 700 Native American children a year are taken from their families. 700 Native American children a year are taken from their families. Federal funding for foster care is the incentive behind the practice. A social worker telephoned Janice Ho, a Native American in South Dakota, to tell her blah, 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 blah. Hal was stunned. She had never seen any sign of a drug problem. And that's the thing. Do we even know that these people that named their child Adolf Hitler, do we know that there was really bleak, or is this a made-up story? Where's the evidence? Okay? Is the evidence real, or is it made up? You don't know. Hal was stunned. She never saw a sign of a drug problem, but the next morning a social worker arrived to take Yellow Robe's two-year-old twin babies. Now, what sounds like a more ridiculous name? Adolf Hitler or Yellow Robe? Okay? I bet you they didn't take this child because the person's name was Yellow Robe. Okay, poverty, alcoholism, and crime remain serious problems in U.S. Indian reservations. They also remain serious problems in the African American community. Okay, but you don't see people taking their children left and right, putting their children in foster care left and right. Well, you do in some instances, but nowhere near to the extent that you do with white families and Amerindian families, or that you see with children being confiscated at the border from Mexicans and other Hispanics illegally crossing the border. I say keep the families illegally crossing the border together. Send the family back together. Repatriate the family together. Moving on.
a term in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual in order to then call it a disease and treat it as a disease and write a prescription for it. When I went to medical school, there were only 6 or 7 items in the manual. Now there are over 300. I mean, you mean to tell me that there have been 294 diseases discovered in the last 60 years? In psychiatry alone? It's a joke. It's an epidemic of psychiatry that we are dealing with. We don't have an epidemic of mental illness, we have an epidemic of psychiatry. You eat too much, it's a disease, it's an addiction. You smoke too much, it's a disease. You are too unhappy, it's a disease. You're too thin, it's a disease. You're too fat, it's a disease. You have too little sex, it's a disease. You have too much sex, it's a disease. No free will, it's all chemicals. No self-discipline, no self-control. The chemical imbalance meshes very well with the idea that you give a drug which restores the balance. It's a story, a mythology, a fable. And that's the baseline from which we're operating now in America. The child doesn't perform the way he should or behaves he should. He is not responsible. Some chemical will give him a chemical. You hear day in and day out on television that this is a mental illness and that's a mental illness. And Zoloft is advertised. Beer you can't advertise, but Zoloft you can advertise. But it's not just psychiatry. It's the whole psychiatrization of the culture. Now what's more toxic, Zoloft or beer? Amen. Case closed. See, the internal contradiction in these very concepts is so total that they don't stand up to any scrutiny. Nobody has yet measured, demonstrated, or created a test to show that somebody has a chemical imbalance in their brain. Period. Psychiatrists are getting more and further and further and further away from this human-to-human touch. And they're becoming more and more quacks, where they talk and act and impersonate doctors. They talk about diagnoses and treatments and the brain and all this kind of stuff about which they know nothing. Zero. It's not science, it's politics and economics. That's what psychiatry is, politics and economics. Behavior control. It is not science, it is not medicine. Not science, it's politics and economics. That's what psychiatry is, politics and economics. Behavior control. It is not science, it is not medicine. Not science, it's politics and economics. That's what psychiatry is, politics and economics. Behavior control. And economics. Behavior control. It is not science and economics. Behavior control. Not science, it is not medicine. Not science, it is not medicine. Not science, it is not medicine. Not science, it is not medicine.
So this shows how psychiatry is being used to enforce social norms in the previous eras, in the so this is about homosexuality. Now, whoever is being oppressed, blacks, gays, or in the modern era, heterosexuals and whites and Mexicans, whoever's being oppressed, psychiatry simply aligns itself with the prevailing political ideology, whether you're in Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union or the United States. So who's being oppressed, mind you, it has to do with who psychiatry has allied itself with. So here you see psychiatry being used to oppress a homosexual. But in today's world, it's being used to oppress heterosexuals, whites, okay? Not blacks and homosexuals, okay? And that's what you have to understand.
Do you think things are going well for you in the hospital?
Pretty much. Nothing about Sammy.
How about telling me a little bit about the current problem that you have?
At home?
Or what brings you to the hospital now?
Oh, well, first our family life sort of depressed me. And, I just know no place you can start and say this is the reason I'm here. I had and still have fantasies that I'm aware of now and I can cope with a lot better than I could. And well, these when I first came in were extremely vivid fantasies, and they seem real to me now that I so real anymore.
Can you tell me about the fantasies?
Yeah, well, basically, they were the color gray. And whenever I was faced with a dilemma, I'd lapse into this sort of a gray dream, and which was accompanied with passing out, and then I'd hear voices while I was passed out. The voices didn't resemble anyone I'd ever known before's voice.
So essentially this is a form of escapism that probably could be dealt with if the person was given the proper supports. But they're not given the proper supports. They're put in a hospital and stigmatized.
And they would speak to me and tell me different things. Like, they tell me to keep believing in them. Their way of doing things, that escaping through this was right. When I got up here, it seemed sort of ridiculous to keep referring to them, keep going back. They got violent for about a week in order to be able to control what I was doing for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. And then I came out of this, and I was completely away from my head. Had gray images for a good 2 or 3 weeks now. Still, basically, my problem is sexual-wise. It's given me a lot of problems, and it's frustrated me a great deal.
So his primary concern is not what seem to be intrusive thought patterns more than actual hallucinations. And remind you, I'm not a doctor, but I'm telling you from working in mental health, this isn't like hardcore hallucinations. This is him having intrusive thoughts, trying to justify the break with his own morality and the prevailing morality of the outside world. Now, he's claiming that his problem is sexual because that's what they're saying to him. Now, I agree. I agree that homosexuality is not normal, and my view on it is people should have the right to do whatever they choose to do as long as everybody involved is a consenting adult. Okay? However, I do believe that homosexuality is not normal or healthy, and I think that's provable. But the thing is, a lot of things aren't normal or healthy. That doesn't mean that people need to be persecuted for engaging in behaviors that aren't normal and healthy. However, it also doesn't mean that society should support behaviors that aren't normal and healthy. And as you notice, the modern mental health system is promoting the exploration of homosexuality. Okay? As I showed with NAMI. NAMI promotes homosexuality. In my opinion, homosexuality shouldn't be promoted, and in the same sense, the people should not be persecuted. If they want help, they should be able to get help. Okay?
And does this continue to bother you at this point?
Still does.
Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Well, since I was about the 7th grade, I never was extremely comfortable around girls, and more so around my same sex. And it developed into sort of a bisexual arrangement. And where I was comfortable with both sexes, and I had relations with both sexes. And this still irritated and bothered me a great deal. There was a great amount of guilt involved. And then one time, one of the boys I had relations with decided that he hadn't done so much on his part to provoke the incident. And he went around and told a couple of people about it. And I was branded pretty much as homosexual. And then, well, it seemed like half the school knew about it because I was constantly poked out and irritated. And then I thought the only way out was possibly to leave, just get up as much money as I could and go somewhere. And at this time I didn't think my parents knew about it. I went down to the bus station just before my bus left for New Orleans. My mother came driving up, and one of my friends had called her and told her what was going on. And then this seemed even worse than before. My parents should know about it, but they should be faced with the same thing. And then I went ahead and changed my ticket, went to go see my brother, and that didn't help much at all. Then I came back home finally, and missed a great deal of school. But then that's when I first started coming up here as an outpatient, seeing Dr. Chanel. And the difficulties that were still there at school, and then I just completely broke down one afternoon. I just didn't have any control of myself or what I was thinking, and of course all this was accompanied with suicidal tendencies and so forth that I didn't have any control over either. And then I came up here.
Now, when we come back, I'm going to delve into critical race theory, what is critical race theory, and how mental health is using critical race theory to justify targeting and ostracizing and poisoning with neurotoxins heterosexual white men. And that's all for this video. There will be more in the near future.